They say the fire rat burned for 7 days, that the screams rose higher than the pyres, and when the wind shifted, it carried ash and bone across the hills like snow made of sorrow. It was March 1244 when the fortress fell, the last stronghold of the Cathars, those strange, stubborn heretics who believed the soul was light and the flesh a prison. Rome called them wicked, Toulouse called them dangerous, and the church called for their extinction. The siege ended with a promise: conversion or flame. More than 200 chose the fire. She was known for 2 things: her silver blonde hair that reached her knees, and her voice that never once trembled, not even when her father was dragged from the chapel. But one woman lived. Her name was of Mirepoix, 20 years old, daughter of a Cathar healer, and a mother who sang hymns that never mentioned saints. She should have died with them. She refused to recant, refused to kneel, but some twist of power or cruelty. A knight from Narbonne said Gervais d'Arc claimed her, said she would be cleansed by marriage, said her womb would be redeemed by bearing sons of the true faith, not as prisoner, as bride. He said it was mercy. She said nothing. They dressed her in white, not out of purity, but mockery. Her gown was borrowed from a nobleman's dead daughter, still stained at the hem. They laced her bodice so tightly she could not breathe without effort, and pinned her hair into a crown of thorns made from brambles outside the burnt chapel. The wedding took place in the ruins. No priest, only men in armor, drinking and laughing. They made her walk barefoot across blackened stone, and when Sir Gervais placed his ring iron, not gold, on her finger, someone whispered, "Now the heretic carries Christ in her blood," but never blinked. Not when they sealed the tower behind her that night, not when the door closed with the sound of a and not when Gervais leaned in, reeking of wine and conquest, and whispered what he would do to her body, what she was for. She smiled, just once, then reached up softly like a bride, reaching to caress her new husband's cheek. Instead, she pulled free a coil of her own hair, thick, heavy, unbroken. She wrapped it around his neck, and pulled. They say it took less than a minute. They say he never screamed, and when she was done, she sat beside the corpse, humming a hymn no one alive remembered. Then, with a shard of mirror left in the tower, she carved open her own belly, not to die, but to remove something. She whispered, as the blood spilled out, "I'll return what was never mine to carry." They found her at dawn, still seated, still humming, her gown soaked red, pooling around her feet like a second wedding veil. The knight beside her, purple-faced, eyes open, looked less like a groom and more like a statue of shame. But it was the carving that silenced even the loudest among them. A straight incision, careful, ritualistic, from navel to pelvis. The blade she used lay beside her, cleaned, and in a bowl, likely brought from the wine table below, sat a lump of flesh. It looked like nothing at first, but as one squire leaned closer, he whispered, "It's hollow. No organs, no blood vessels, no bone, empty skin, just a soft, folded sack of flesh perfectly removed and tied shut with a strand of her own hair." She did not resist when they took her, did not flinch when the chains bit her wrists. When asked what she'd done, she answered simply, "A man known for burning books before he read them, and blessing swords before they pierced lungs. He ordered moved to a monastery in the hills, to be interrogated, not killed. A woman with a voice like hers," he said, "can be repurposed. I gave their god his due." The Bishop of Albi arrived 3 days later, riding under banners of gold and black, but they heard humming, not from her lips, from the bowl, the same tune, over and over. One monk smashed it against a tree. Inside, he claimed, were teeth, tiny, like a child's. She would whisper without voice, mouthing a single word, "Return." But something followed her, her hands folded, her hair down, wet with dew though the stone was dry. He asked her what she wanted, but the seed still blooms. "In me." The monks in the carriage said she'd never spoke on the journey, and the mirror in her cell cracked, though no one had touched it. He refused to speak after that. At the monastery, was locked in the scriptory tower, fed twice daily, watched through a slit in the wall. She spoke only once to the cook who delivered her bread. She looked at the girl and said, "On the altar, they found strands of long, blonde hair." wrapped around a rosary, tight enough to splinter the beads. When the womb is forced open, something else crawls in. The next morning, the cook had vanished. The chapel smelled of milk and smoke. Then the dreams began. The monk spoke of seeing a pale figure walking the halls, dragging a mirror behind her. Her mouth stitched, her belly raw and open. The bishop came to see her himself. She was seated, as always, in silence. She replied, "You took my people's ashes and salted the ground?" The bishop called for an exorcism, but none of the priests made it through the first chant. Blood began to leak from their noses. The scripture caught fire without flame. That night vanished. No signs of struggle, only the bowl remained, and the hollow thing inside it still warm, still pulsing. After her disappearance, the monks sealed the tower. They poured holy wax in the cracks, carved crosses into every brick, and rang the chapel bell for 7 nights. A rite usually reserved for cleansing the possessed, but did not cleanse. It remembered. Within a month, the surrounding villagers whispered of strange things. First, the milkmaids, no wounds, blonde, tied into little knots like ribbons around their wrists, just red milk seeping from their skin. They said they dreamed of holding something warm, something that breathed and purred, but when they opened their eyes, their arms were empty, and the sheets smelled like ashes. 3 young women from Mirepoix began waking with blood on their chests. Then came the widows, 7 in total. Each one remarried a man from outside the region, and each was found dead within days of their second wedding, mouths wide open, tongues missing. They stopped marrying at all. Bellies slit in the same line, as no suspects. Monk travelers spoke of hearing singing from the ruins. From Albi returned, but every mother understood. To the tower she is waiting to be filled again, with a letter he claimed was S. final writing. It was found under a loose stone, scrawled in ashen wine. No footprints. People stopped burying their dead. Jazz hair. By the 3rd case, by the 5th, not a child, a heresy that took root not in flesh, but in silence. That her act had unknit the sacred bond between woman and role, wife and womb. That she had emptied herself so completely that something else had moved in, not chance. Local priests began blaming a heretical curse of wombs unblessed. They preached that had birthed an idea. Women reported mirrors fogging in the night, not with steam but with breath. Something on the other side, and in the glass, their own faces, smiling back, but the smiles didn't match, and neither did the eyes. Something that wanted others to be hollow too. 1. Do not marry what you do not love. Do not carry what they give you. What they put inside you is not always a child. Sometimes it is a cage. The tower was burned the next morning, but even fire couldn't stop it. A year later, not hymns, lullabies, sung in a language no one remembered, and then came the mirrors. In 4 different houses across Languedoc, a priest tried to bless one of the homes. He shattered the mirror during the prayer, claiming it had whispered to him, "She is not gone, she is beneath." The Bishop of Albi declared the area cursed. He sent letters to Rome asking for a full cleansing, but before the envoy arrived, he vanished. They found only his boots left neatly at the chapel steps. Inside them, hair curled, still growing. 25 years passed. The tower had collapsed in a storm, but nothing grew where it once stood. No moss, no weeds, not even rot. Locals began calling it La Crutha Hollow, a place that would not remember the world, because the world had chosen to forget it. But not everyone forgot. The abbess dismissed her, but when the novice showed a small tokun, a single black rosary bead melted flat, like something had pressed it against fire and bone, they let her stay. In 1271, a young nun named Marguerite de Solène arrived at the Abbey of claiming she had dreamt of a woman with silver hair singing inside a cracked mirror. In them, the tale was half allegory, half warning, of a bride who gave herself not to man, but to the absence between men, a void that seduced, swallowed, and remembered everything. Marguerite had read the forbidden texts. She had found mention of la femme vide, the empty woman, in scraps of Cathar scripture buried beneath a crypt in Foix. The church had destroyed most references, but one remained. A passage scratched into the wax lining of a confession box claimed that had not died. She had passed through, where it did not say, only this, She waits where brides no longer speak, where mirrors show you not what is, but what's inside. She waits for the next womb that says no. Marguerite returned to, or what was left of it. There, she prayed, she fasted, she cut her tongue just slightly each day, leaving drops of blood on stone, where once sat, and on the seventh night, the wind stopped, not slowed, stopped. No birds, no bells, just the sound of soft, wet breathing rising. From beneath the ground, Marguerite dug with her hands. Beneath the roots of a twisted tree, she found something hard. She expected a relic, a skull, a book, but it was a mirror, wrapped in bridal cloth, cracked, as if something writhed inside. And each night, she saw herself inside it not as she was, but how she feared she could become. And humming, she brought it back to the abbey, hid it beneath her bed, her eyes dull, scrawled not in ink but blood, her mouth sewn shut, and her belly distended. The abbess began asking questions. Marguerite answered none, until one morning she vanished. In her cell, only a note remained. She returned what was forced. I will return what I accepted. Soon after, 3 more nuns disappeared. One was found in the garden, hair torn out by the root, lips missing, but smiling, and in her lap a bundle of cloth, still warm, still wet, still empty. They sealed the abbey a month later. Official records say, illness swept through a fever of the womb. They called it women waking with phantom pains, lactating though they had never known a child. One nun slit her belly open with a chalice stem, screaming that something inside her was singing in a tongue older than God. Rome sent a Father Matthew Farrell, chronicler of heresy and midwife to the damned. He arrived with scrolls, relics, and a mirror of polished obsidian said to reveal inversion. But the mirror shattered on its own the first night. The cracks, he claimed, formed a word. He went to the next morning, alone. His journal, recovered months later from beneath the roots of a withered tree, ended with a final page. One sentence, she wades beneath the vow. And with that, silence. But the villagers never forgot. Each year, on the anniversary of the burning, the women close their windows. They burn hairbrushes. They salt their mirrors. And above all, they do not wed. They say it's just folklore. They say it's just a caution. But if you ask the midwives, especially the old ones, the ones with bones like driftwood and eyes like burnt milk, they'll tell you the truth. They've seen her not exactly. A womb that carries not flesh, but memory. A bride with no husband, only a hymn. But what she became, the thing that moved through her, the echo of a woman emptied by force, and so filled by something else. A voice that doesn't use lips. They say that some women, when broken just right, do not bleed. They hum. One child was born in Foix in 1673 with no mouth, but a perfect ability to sing. Her first word was return. In 1786, a noblewoman carved her own belly open on her wedding night, whispering she'd told me where the latch was hidden. In 1901, a photograph taken in shows a figure in white, hair down to her knees, staring at the ruin with no face, only a mirror where her head should be. And even now, locals speak of Le Creux, the hollow place. Nothing grows there, not grass, not grief, just quiet. And once a year, on a moonless night, if you walk past it with a ring in your pocket, any ring, you will hear her, not screaming, not crying, but singing, a lullaby older than memory, soft, low, and always in the voice of someone you once loved.